It's time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Ken Garr. Make sure you follow him on all the social medias. Also follow me if you don't already. If you're listening to this podcast, go over to my YouTube page and watch us live. And again, go to my website, Paul F. Comedy, for upcoming dates and check out our sponsors. Hey gang, as some of you know, I used to be a practicing lawyer in Chicago. I no longer practice, but from time to time, I need a lawyer. And when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You're welcome. Comedian Ken Garr joins me. Hey, Ken.
Hi, Paul.
Welcome to Why Are You Awake?
Thanks for having me.
Ken, I've known you for a long motherfucking time.
Couple of months now.
Yeah, a couple of months. I remember the first time I met you. Do you remember when it was?
No, tell me about it.
We both did a show at Zany's in Rosemont. I don't remember if it was like a show. Maybe it was like the 10 Tuesday 10 or whatever they used to do. You had like 1,000 people in the audience. They
Really?
were all there to see you. This is when you were drinking.
Oh, okay.
Because we went out
I was
afterwards.
popular back then.
We went out after.
I have no friends now.
Yeah, they don't like us when we stopped drinking. Yeah, I met you there, and I think you were still working. You still had a job.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I don't know, but it was a long time
Was
ago.
I still living in Chicago, or was
Yeah,
I in
you
LA?
were
Oh, okay.
still in
Yeah,
Chicago.
I had a full-time job then, yeah.
Or maybe you had just moved or something like that. It's over 10 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
And then, like, you kind of were a dick.
Yes, that's everyone's first impression of me. For sure. Everyone I've ever met is like, I didn't like you when I first met you.
Yeah, and I don't think like I don't remember anything like being like, oh, he's fucking awesome. So I felt like you weren't happy with your show either.
Okay.
Or something happened, but you got drunk.
Yeah, probably.
I went out, I was drinking a little bit too, but you had like so many people in the crowd. It was like a regular crowd, a regular show there. So that was my first
back
impression.
when people used to come to my shows and we would go out. It's weird when so next week I'll be sober 7 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great for you.
And so your life changes when you, and then I still love my friends and life kind of takes over. They have kids and, you know, they have lives and they coach baseball teams and my life is very different because I travel the world. But those first years I did stand up, I always had people come out. It was always a party. It was a big thing. But to get back to your like impression of me, yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I don't know if it's just something about my personality where I come off as arrogant or egotistical, and then when I kind of let my guard down a little bit, because I'm very particular about who I'm friends with, as I think we all should be.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to come off that way. But I've heard that my whole life.
I mean, I hear the same thing. People are like, I was a dick to people younger, or they were intimidated by me. But it's just because I'm quiet. I don't get involved.
Yes.
I don't socialize at the bars.
Yeah.
But
and now that I quit drinking, I found out that I'm actually shy, and which people do not get at all.
I'm like that too. Yeah.
Because I'm very comfortable with you because I've known you for a long time.
Right.
But when I meet people, I'm very standoffish, which people take as either arrogant, cocky, egotistical. Sure. But at the same time, I have such social anxiety because I don't drink anymore.
Right.
I don't know how to do small talk. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to talk about the weather or the sports or like, you know what I mean? Like, tell me what your dreams are. What are you trying to accomplish?
Right.
Like,
I stopped drinking. I'm not like sober, but I don't drink. I drink maybe 3 or 4 times a year tops.
well, you didn't have a problem, right? You were
No.
just like, I'm just going to slow down and focus on work, right?
I had health issues where my doctor's like, I had 2 ulcers. I had to stop drinking for a brief period of time. And then afterwards I was like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It didn't even,
Yeah.
it felt like it wasn't as fun for me.
For me, I drank because I wanted to have that personality. I wanted to be like fun and outgoing, and like it helped me loosen up as alcohol does. But but then like I always explain, I was fun the first 2 hours, and then after that it was like the
downhill.
demons came out, and I was just like the one joke I wrote was like my nickname in college was, "What's wrong with your friend?"
I was never like a mean drunk, but people couldn't tell that I was drunk until I was like hammered. Because
Yeah.
I was pretty even keeled. Like you, I also like when I don't drink, I am kind of shy. Like I don't want to talk to people. What did you do to substitute the alcohol? So for me, I started eating a lot of candy.
Oh yeah.
What have you found that
I had a lot of sex. So as an addict, so I'm an alcoholic, right? So, and as an alcoholic addict, you play whack-a-mole with addictions. And so I went from like an alcoholic, and then I smoked weed the first year I was sober. I'd never done drugs, hard drugs.
Right.
I've never done cocaine, crack. I've never done anything because I always looked down on it. But that first year I quit drinking, I started smoking weed, and then after a while, I was like, well, I'm just smoking weed every day now. So like, I still have the same issue, which is like, I'm trying to numb these feelings, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm just, all right, so I'm going to quit smoking weed. And then I just started having a lot of sex. And then that became an issue where it was just like, dude, I just want to stop all of this. But candy is the thing. So tonight you and I did a show,
right?
And I joked about Ozempic, but I've been on it for about 7 weeks.
Oh, are
now.
you really?
Yeah, I'm down 20 pounds because I am a sugar addict as well.
Mm-hmm.
So people roll their eyes when I'm talking about like, oh, what's Ken's new issue? Like the fact is like I always have some type of active addiction that I'm trying to like overcome. So for me, the latest one has been sugar, Reese's peanut butter cups, and brownies from 7-Eleven or Brookies from 7. Shout out Brookie 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven doesn't get enough credit for their candies and everything.
They're baked goods.
So
Come
good.
on,
The
dude.
cookie there
the
is
mini
amazing.
donuts.
The vanilla Long John there donut is my go-to.
Yeah.
It's better than Dunkin' Donuts. It's better than fucking 90% of basic donuts.
And so as an alcoholic, my body still craves the sugar that alcohol used to provide. And so when I started doing this, I'm doing a semaglutide just for everyone out there. I'm not doing the actual Ozempic, but it's the same stuff. It completely shut my cravings off immediately.
So if you eat, you're not craving it, but if you eat it, it doesn't faze you?
No. In fact, I had a Reese's peanut butter cup for the first time in 7 weeks the other night. There was one in my freezer. I'm like, how'd you get by? And I ate it, and something like that would usually derail me from a diet
Just
or
go to
from
7 of them,
honestly. And so, but it's a real thing, man. These late night cravings, and especially as comedians, I love fast food. I would eat. I haven't had any fast food at all for 7 or 8 weeks.
My fear about doing something like that is that when you stop, what happens then?
I may not stop. And
Okay.
so
you just do it for the rest of your life.
So what they tell you is that, once you reach your goal weight, so you start off with a little bit and each week, and then they gradually increase it. And
so that's your new addiction.
Well, yeah, my new addiction. I just
like, here you go.
I'm just freebasing Ozempic. and so, but no, they increase it every week, and then once you hit your goal weight, they bring you back down. Okay. There's a lot of people that microdose. So they might just take what that initial one
microdose Ozempic?
Yeah. And so like instead of doing like one once a week, they might do like one every 2 weeks, or they might do an injection once a month. But I know that like, eventually what happens is like if you come off it, those cravings come back. Because whenever I'm toward the latter end of the week, I start being like getting all wiry.
I took phentermine, which is like a pill.
Yeah.
That's it's just speed. It's a weight loss thing.
Yeah.
I lost like 15 pounds off of it. You take a pill every morning for 30 days. Around midnight, it stops working.
Right.
And then you're like,
you're like a gremlin. I gotta get to bed.
I eat everything. Yeah. It's a narcotic.
Yeah.
My doctor's like, all right. I go, so now I do the third month, I just did it once a week, twice a week. Right. Because I'm going to start doing ADHD drugs, hopefully. So you can't do both. There's too many.
Yeah, my wife is on Adderall. And
I've never done that. And I tried one for the first time. I was like, this is all I need.
Did it help you like stay like...
I took an ADHD test as an adult and I have it.
Yeah,
and,
my wife does too.
So my doctor's like deciding. He said, you can't do both. I'm like, well, give me the Adderall. Someone gave me some. I'm like, oh, and it's the same effect as the drug that I was taking. But like I'm focused. I'm like, oh my God.
So if you have ADHD, it doesn't, like the effect it has is like you become more focused, that fog goes away. And like my wife is like a totally different person.
It's the best.
For me, I don't have ADHD. And so it's just straight up cocaine for me.
So when I did cocaine, that's how I was.
You're nice and calm, right? You're like cleaning the house and shit. And
no, I wasn't cleaning. I was like, let's just sit here and talk.
Oh,
about you.
yeah.
You're my new best friend. And then when they're doing the examination for ADHD, they're like, so you just be calm with cocaine? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, yeah, you have it.
Oh, yeah. My wife could drink a coffee at 11 o'clock at night.
Doesn't affect me.
Zero effect on her. Whereas we were driving home from LA when we moved out here, and so I popped one of her Adderalls. I am a sober person, but I don't have a problem. It didn't become a thing. But I popped one of her Adderalls just because I was getting really tired. Oh, dude, I made 17 phone calls. I started 2 businesses.
That's
I'm calling my buddy like, we got to start a podcast. He's like,
all drugs have always affected me differently. Like even pot would make me super. Everyone's like, oh, this is the relaxing one, and I'd just be in a corner being like, this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Huh? I'm like freaking the fuck out. You moved to LA. When did you move there? 7 years ago?
No, 11 or 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you left here, you started doing comedy there. Before that, you were working, you had a full-time job in the corporate world.
Career, yeah.
And then you were married, you got divorced, and then you started comedy?
No. So I started doing comedy in like 2001, right? Honestly, after 9/11, yeah. So what my journey, Paul, was I started doing open mics. I had a full-time job in sales. I got married. I told my ex-wife before we got married that I would never be a full-time comedian. She didn't have to worry about that. I didn't want that life. I wanted to make money. I wanted to have nice things. And then we got married, and I just, it was like every weekend I was doing shows, and as you know, and it just became more and more a part of my life. And I think she kind of saw the writing on the wall, and she just kind of wanted a 9-to-5 guy. And so, we got divorced. I made a decision to leave the corporate world, and I was just going to leave. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try this for a year. I'll try it for a year. In Chicago. And I called Mike Eo, who's a producer here in Chicago, that he gave me a lot of work. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to move downtown. I'm going to quit my job. He's like, man, you've done everything you can here. He's like, there's not much more. He's like, just go to LA or New York. And at the time, there's a whole bunch of people, Lisa Traeger, Joe Kilgallen. There was this big exodus. And so I was going to do 2 weeks in LA, 2 weeks in New York, and figure out where I wanted to live. I went to LA, and I just fell in love with it that day. Like, I didn't even go to New York. I didn't want to go to New York, to be honest with you. I rented out my house. I sold everything I owned, and I packed up. I traded in a Lexus SUV for a Honda Civic, which I still have 13 years later. Okay. And I moved to LA, and I lived there for 10 years. I did meet my wife, my current wife, the day I got divorced from my first wife at a comedy club called Riddles on the South Side. It was open mic night. And 6 years later, we started dating. We lived in LA together. We got married during COVID, and she moved out to LA for a couple of years. And we just decided that, I wanted to be a full-time comic. I didn't want to really do TV and movies and all that stuff. I just love doing stand-up. So she was like, hey, let's just go back to Chicago.
That's why you moved back to Chicago?
Yeah. She's from Chicago originally.
Right.
I'm from Chicago. For me, it was like 10 years in LA. I accomplished a lot. I got a lot of... I'm very happy with what I did out there, but I just felt at the end of the day that I really just want to do stand-up, and I want to make money doing stand-up, and you couldn't really do that in LA. And to be honest with you, the landscape has changed so that social media is so prevalent. So if you look at a comedy club's website, there's a lot of like TikTok people, YouTube, and I'm not a hater. I'm like, hey, good for you. No. They've never been out to LA. They just have a huge following. They can sell out a room. And so for me, it's like this idea of like a guy with a cigar in the back of the club that like changes your life. Like it doesn't work that way anymore. You got to get on Kill Tony. You got to somehow get on Joe Rogan or Theo's podcast. And like those are the new Johnny Carsons. Right. For me, it was like, all right, I want to own a home. I have 2 dogs and a 2-bedroom apartment in Studio City. My parents are 80. I want to, and my friend's dad died while we were in Costa Rica at a wedding. And I was like, look, I want to be there for my parents' final chapters. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so for me, there was like so many reasons to leave LA, and I'm not a hater. I love LA. It's a great place to live. It's a paradise.
Well, it's funny because I was hesitant to move to LA. I had a similar conversation with someone years ago that you got to get out of Chicago.
Right.
And right before COVID, I found a place in North Hollywood. I was like, all right, go there for a month, try it out. I didn't want to go to New York. I'm like, LA, I have connects. I had kind of gotten past soft at some clubs and everything. I'm like, all right, at least I have a home base there, and then on weekends I'll travel. And then COVID hit, and then I was like, I feel like I missed my window.
Yeah.
And every time I've gone back to LA, it's all new gatekeepers, obviously.
Right.
And like you said, it's like I did all the shows and I do really well on them. And then people are like, oh, you want to do my show in 2 weeks? I'm like, no, I'm only here for like a week. And like, you got to come out here. I'm like, I'm not going to go out there unless I'm past somewhere that I can call my home club.
Right.
When everybody that moved there started moving back, I'm just like, okay, maybe I don't. And a lot of people I met during COVID who were LA comics that moved to like Florida or wherever, they're like, you don't need to go there anymore. I was like, I started being like, I don't need to go there. But then I've been in Chicago all my life. I'm like, man, I feel like I have worn out my welcome here sometimes.
Here's what I would tell people. If you want to live in Los Angeles, if you want to change your scenery, like, go do it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, go move there because the weather's beautiful, and you like
nice.
You want to go to the beach, and you want to rub elbows with the Bobby Lee and like, you know what I mean? But like, someone said to me, I think it might have been Brad Garrett said to me, and it like changed my whole perspective on comedy. He said, if you have gigs on the calendar and money in your pocket, he's like, you've made it.
Right.
He's like, give up. He's like, I want you to give up on the idea of making it. He's like, and just be grateful for the gigs you have. And so for me, I was just like, oh, wow. Like it like this light went off, and I was just like, oh, I just want to work. And I was having a conversation with Ben Glebe, who I opened for a few years. At the time, I had a radio show, a podcast. I had 3 shows I was booking at the Improv. And he goes, oh, what like, how much money are you making on these things? I'm like, oh, I don't make any money. He goes, yeah, then stop doing them. I'm like, but yeah, man, I'm like hustling. I'm trying to get this, like, I'm trying to throw it again, just see what sticks. He goes, man, just focus, like, be really good at one thing.
I'm the opposite. I throw everything at the wall. I'm like, one of these will stick.
That's how I am. And I'm not saying that that's wrong.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
But for me, it was like, I wasn't enjoying doing those other things. Like, it's hard producing a comedy show. It's hard.
Sure.
Doing and I have a couple podcasts that I'm working on, but like, there are things that like, I don't want to approach a project as like, I have to do this. This is the thing I have to do because I want to make it.
Yeah, you have to enjoy whatever it is that you're doing, and not, if your goal is to be like, I'm going to go viral with this clip where it's going to get someone canceled or whatever the fuck. I agree with that.
Right.
During the week there, were you getting up pretty regularly?
It doesn't matter who you are, what your credits are, any of that. LA doesn't give a fuck. And so like the first show I did, it was Damon. I had to follow Damon Wayans. Mm-hmm. And the host had been on the Tonight Show twice. And I remember calling my mom. She's like, do you feel like a small fish in a big pond? I'm like, I am plankton in the ocean. No one's heard of Ken Garr.
Right.
Like I had some notoriety, I feel like, in Chicago. Like people kind of knew me. But there, they didn't care. Like, go sign up for the open mic. And I remember talking to Steve Trevino, and he's just like, do open mics and then go hang out at the Comedy Store. And I did that for like the first 5 years, and I didn't get past the store. They changed bookers. Like, Tommy was there, and then he left, and then what's his name took over, who's down at Joe Rogan's now. It's just like you're constantly like trying to keep up with the changes that are happening. The way I approached it was a very blue collar kind of mentality, which and I think you and I have a lot in common because we've been in the real world. We've had a real job and a real career. So we kind of approach it from a business perspective. And so my mentality was, I'm clocking in at 5 p.m. Like, that's what at 5 p.m., I'm either going to go to an open mic. I'm going to go to, I'm going to hustle. I'm going to get out there. And I remember one weekend, I was headlining the comedy club in Milwaukee. And then I flew home. And then that Sunday, I was literally collecting email addresses to get onto a show. We'll put you on our show if you go out and collect email addresses for the people waiting in line.
Oh, my God.
And so I'm like, 1 minute I'm headlining a club.
Right.
And the next minute I'm like, hey, man, can I get your email? Like, yeah, sure, But it was like the hottest show in LA, and I wanted to get a 5-minute spot. And so for me, it was just like, I'm not going to have a chip on my shoulder. I'm going to work. I'm going to outwork everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it worth it. Because if I'm not going to be able to go to my niece's graduations and birthday parties, I'm missing so many things that I'm not going to sit here. And I saw that a lot. I saw a lot of comics that moved out there, and they're like, they're the shit in the Midwest, and then they come out to LA, and they're like, wait, why aren't everyone opening these doors for me?
Right.
And like, man, it doesn't work that way. Like, you got to like start at the bottom.
Were you able to crack I know you say you didn't pass the Comedy Store, but you you were regular at the Improv.
Yeah,
They took care of
you.
You
just
there.
so at first, I started hosting the open mic at the Ice House. And I made that like the biggest, best open mic in the country. Like it was huge. It was awesome. And then I approached the Improv and I was like, hey, Mondays are for the Comedy Store. You got potluck. Like that's like everyone goes, I go Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I created lab work at the Hollywood Improv, and Jamie, who was the booker at the time, was just like, I'll come sit in every week. And that way I can get to see some of these new people coming in. And so, I mean, we had to turn people away. Everyone knew that she was going to be there. Yeah. Everyone. I mean, so I hosted lab work for like 4 or 5 years up until COVID at the Hollywood Improv, and that's where like people really got to know me. The advice I tell people when you get to LA is like be useful. So help some of these headliners like with their podcasts. If you know how to edit, like tell them you'll edit some clips for them. Like tell them you'll sell merch for them. And a lot of people kind of scoff at this and like, oh man, I'm not gonna do that shit. Like, you got to find, like, you got to hustle.
I was opening for someone like, hey man, I've got someone now because he records all my sets. I'm like, fuck, I got to learn how to video.
Right.
It seems like that having that mentality, like I have too, where I'm like, I'm going to work. I might not be the funniest person in the room, but I'm going to work harder than everybody else.
Right.
That's gotten me to a certain level, but then you feel like there's a ceiling. You're like, okay, how do you get to that next level?
I mean, I hate to say it because it's so cliche, but a lot of it is just luck.
Yeah, it's luck. And also I feel like right now the game has changed so much where if you can go viral, if you can get a social media following, it's like that can work out for you.
I was out in Dubai doing a show, and these British comics were like talking about that very subject. I'm like, you know what, just tape pickles to your chest and go out. I go, just have some type of weird thing. Like, oh, there's the pickle comic, I'm like, I saw a video last night of a girl, pretending she was a robot and was doing crowd work as a robot, and it's like millions of views, and it's very fun. But it's like that's what her funny thing is, right? Would I want to watch it for 45 minutes? I don't know. I definitely have not cracked the social media code. I'm very fortunate that a lot of the work that I do has kind of built-in audiences and marketing engines that bring people to me.
That's the way to be, yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that because I make a living doing this, and I don't have to like be beholden to like that social media hustle.
When you were in LA, were you a night owl back then too?
Oh yeah, so I always have been.
Even when you were a kid?
Yeah.
What did you do when you were a kid? Like when you were
watch Johnny Carson.
Yeah,
I watched.
Your parents let you watch it.
They let me stay up until the comedian was done, and then I had to go to bed.
Oh wow! See, I would only get to stay up till the monologue.
Okay,
and then I had to go to bed.
Yeah, if there was a comedian on the show, which there normally was, they let me watch the comedian.
Oh, nice. That's good.
But yeah, there's something, and that was a big problem with my first wife and I, in that she was not a night owl. She was a special ed teacher. She was tired by 7:00 at night. And I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go to an open mic. And then she'd like kind of guilt me into staying home. And then I'd see her sleeping on the couch. And I was like, well, what am I doing
just
here?
Gone, yeah.
But yeah, no, I've always been a night owl because I do most of my writing late at night.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's when I'll be lying in bed. So here's what's interesting. I've had insomnia my whole life until I got fired from my last job. That night, my insomnia was gone. And it went away forever.
Really?
I never had insomnia because I didn't have I didn't have
stress.
Anything. And here's what's interesting. So when COVID hit, I went and got a day job, like working from home, because I had no income. This was before we knew whether or not self-employed people were going to get any benefits. Mm-hmm. And so my friend Samantha was kind enough to hire me in her company. Here I am like this. I was this highly trained salesperson, and now I'm just like trying to set up meetings for other salespeople. And she's like, "You're so overqualified for this." I'm like, "I just want a job, please. Yeah. I just need money coming in." And then my insomnia came back that night.
Just having that schedule,
because I'm not doing the thing I want to be doing.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You know what I'm saying? The stress and the anxiety of like having to do this thing versus like, right now I can take a nap every day if I want. I can, I can take a gig or not take a gig.
When you were younger, let's go back to that time period. Did you feel different because you were staying up later than your friends, or you found other people like you that were like?
No, I resented having to go to bed.
Yeah. I
was that kid that at Thanksgiving and Christmas, wanted to sit at the adult table and talk about adult things and be accepted by the adults. Yeah. And adults got to stay up late.
Right.
And so I was like Michael J. Fox's character in Family Ties. Like I was like this
young Republican. Yeah.
Yeah. Super. Yeah. But no, I wanted to like be treated as an adult. It was this perception of like, well, you go sit at the kids' table and you have to go to bed because you have school tomorrow and all these things that I still kind of fight that. And again, my first wife was just like, I hate it that you don't go to bed with me. And now my new wife, I tuck her in. I tuck her into bed. No, she's not. No, she's in bed by like 8:30.
Okay.
And so what I do is I go upstairs and we go through our TikToks together and we
she
talk.
Falls asleep and you get to
and
go.
then I give her a kiss and I say, all right, honey, I'm going to go.
Let's talk about high school then. Were you staying up late then? And if so, were you getting into trouble? Drinking a lot?
No. I had...
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to St. Rita High School,
okay.
Catholic League on the south side. I was not a troublemaker. I completely fell in line with what Nancy Reagan wanted, which was like, don't do drugs.
You didn't drink in high school either?
I started drinking my senior year, and that's kind of when I got into trouble. I came home drunk.
Right.
I remember we beat our biggest rival in sports, and I got so drunk that night. Came home, threw up all over the bathroom, missed the toilet completely, and my parents left the vomit there. And I had to wake up the next day with the worst hangover and clean up my own vomit. And then, of course, they like went out and got like Taco Bell. And like, here, eat Taco Bell. And it was just... And then I was grounded for 2 weeks. And I had to miss the championship game because I was grounded. And then I got to college, and I went to a party that night, the first night I'm in college. And I was like, oh, I got to go. I got curfew. I was like, oh, I don't have curfew. And then I just drank for 4 years straight.
Where did you go to?
I went to Iowa.
Oh, that's right.
It was a huge party school at the time.
Sure.
I'm sure it still is.
In high school, were you kind of like, were you in the cool crowd or were you like?
No, I think a lot of comedians relate to this. I was a chameleon.
You got it.
Right?
Yeah,
so I had friends that were jocks. I had friends that were in band. I had friends that were stoners. And I just kind of like weaved my way through a lot of these groups. And then here's what's interesting. My junior year, a very popular kid in high school. He was the kicker on the football team. He was like student vice president. Very popular kid. He's like he walked up to me one day, and we weren't really close, but our lockers were close. And he goes, "Hey man, I'm going to try out for a play." And I was like, "Really? Oh man, it's so gay." All right, you could say that back in the day. Yeah. And he's like, "No." He's like, "I always wanted to do that. You want to join with me?" And I'm like, "All right, man. Yeah, I'll do it. Whatever." And we both got parts.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was the coolest thing ever. I mean, it got me on stage, and I got those first couple laughs, and I was just like, oh, there's something happening here. It was cool. It changed my life. In fact, he came to a show a couple of years ago at Zany's, and I actually called him out and told him that it changed my life, and I was really grateful for that.
That's awesome.
And so when I went to college, I never even said, hey, I want to go to college. It was like, it was already predetermined.
Yeah, you were going to go.
You know? But when I look back, if I had like joined Second City at the time I was in college, at Second City it was like Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Tina Fey. Like I would have been like the all-star. Now, I'm not suggesting that I have that level of talent, but like that's who my peers would have been in that time. And I don't have any regrets, but because eventually I achieved success in this. But I always wonder like if my parents hadn't been so worried about, like, because they were children of the Depression, right? If I hadn't followed their version of what my life should be like versus my own version.
I don't know if I ever would have done comedy if I didn't take classes at Second City. It was never on my radar. No. I loved watching comedy, but I was like, I'm never going to do that. And then your fucking life changes overnight.
I graduated from college. I moved down to Florida to work with my buddies.com. We were going to make it rich. We didn't. And then I came back to Chicago, and my friend Nikki had written a play. She had gone to Second City, and she wrote a play, and she's like, I wrote a part for you. In fact, I wrote 2 parts for you. So we put on this little play, and she's like, you really need to start taking classes at Second City. And so I did, and again, it was like this, oh, this is great. This is fun. I auditioned for the conservatory. I didn't get in, but I got in the second time.
That's the same with me. I got in the conservatory second time.
Yeah, and then I as soon as I got to the conservatory, that level of talent kicks up, and you're just like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Right. But then I started doing stand-up with the guys from Tony and Tina's Wedding, which was upstairs at a rugby bar. And I thought, oh, this is like the first time I did stand-up. I'm like, this is it. Yeah.
This is
what I'm supposed to be doing.
So much fun. When I was a musician, a couple of people were taking classes at Second City. I'm like, what do you want to do improv for? It's so stupid. And we'd make fun of, even as musicians, we looked down on it. And then I was like, fuck, fuck, I wish I like went to class with him.
Yeah.
And Jason Sudeikis was in his class. I was like, oh fuck. And like,
Yeah. My first teacher at Second City was Keegan Michael Key from Key and Peele.
That's
he was my
great.
very first. This guy came in. He's like, all right, we're going to say the alphabet. I'm like, wait, what? You're like, what did I sign up for? He's like, all right, now we're going to play with an imaginary ball. I'm like, what?
It's so weird.
Yeah.
My first teacher was Kate Duffy, who's also a legend in the improv world.
Yeah.
She took me aside and one of the other guys who we took together, another comedian, and he's like, you guys should keep doing this. I was just going to take it as a class for fun. And he was a comedian. I was just like, I'm just going to support him. She took me aside. She's like, you guys are really good at this. I was like, okay. If she didn't take me, I would have been like, it was a fun class to try to meet girls.
They took me aside and they're like, you're not good at this. And I mean, They did. Well, they were like, you're not developing any characters. Second City has like an initial class that everyone can take.
Right.
A whole series of classes
level.
up to a certain level. And then you have to like audition in front of the producers and the whole team. And then you got to get into that. When I got into the conservatory, when it got really serious, just having a great sense of humor, being quick doesn't do it. You have
need
to start
create backstory relationships between people. I was good at that, but then they'd get mad at me because I didn't like doing quirky characters. I was like, I can be the glue. I can make
You're the
you
straight
guys
man.
I want to be a straight man. That's all I wanted. Second City, they don't like that.
Right.
They're like, you have to be a well-rounded.
Right.
Whereas I heard at Annoyance and the other places, they're like, whatever you're good at, they're going to make you really good at it.
Right.
So I always regret that I didn't continue with it, because then I was like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna do stand-up.
I just ended up being like a drunk pirate every week. Like, no more drunk pirate, Ken. I remember I sang in one sketch that I wrote, and they're like, please don't ever sing ever again.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh man, there's a couple teachers that I really just got into it,
Really?
And yeah, I mean, I wasn't getting it, I wasn't understanding it, and now I look back years later and I'm like, oh, I get what they were trying to teach me,
Going back to when we were talking about when you're in LA, what were the nights like there? I've been to LA, and it is hanging out at the store and whatever.
Yeah.
Like you said, the first 5 years you did. But a lot of things, especially post-COVID, is everything closes early. Back then, though, you got to go to the diners and all the fun shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I mean, I loved the life. It was, you go do open mics from 5 until whatever 9. And then you just went up to the patio at the Comedy Store, or you hung out at the bar at the Improv, the main bar. And, you see these people that you've been watching for years, and they're your heroes or peers. And that's when you realize, like, oh, they're just people too, or they're just comics too. Like, they have the same bitching and moaning of comedy that we do. It's just on a different scale or something like that. And so I loved it, man. I sometimes I had to pinch myself. I remember bringing Kevin Nealon on stage one night, and I just remember watching. I used to go to school and do the Hans and Franz voice, and all my friends did. I'm like, what a trip this is! I get to work with these people.
The first time you work with one of your heroes is it's like a surreal moment.
Yeah,
and I remember those times too. You're like, oh god, this is crazy. I used to watch you on Johnny Carson, and now I'm opening for you. It's
my god, it's so cool.
It is cool.
Honestly, I was in the green room at the Improv one time, and the Wolf of Wall Street walked in. And I was like,
"Oh, the real Wolf?
The real guy, like actual guy." I was like, "Wait, what are you?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm here to see Louis C.K." And I was just like, "What is my life right now?" I'm in a green room with Louis C.K. and the Wolf of Wall Street.
It is crazy. Right. It is crazy what comedy opens so many doors to cool shit that you pinch yourself. What about on the road? Let's say when you're on the road, you're doing the shows. After your shows, what are you doing? Because let's say you're in a small fucking town, things are closed. You're not going to bed after a show.
So there's two versions to that story. When I was drinking, it was I'm going out with the audience after the show. And here's what would happen. I had to stop doing that after a while, not just drinking. I had to stop.
You'd go to a second location with
I would
them
go to
too?
a second location
wherever they want
in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And here's what happened every single time. A girl would start flirting with me, and then a guy who liked that girl would see her flirting with me, and then he'd be like, "Oh, get off."
You're not funny.
Yeah, dude, I'm funny. I can do stand up.
Yep.
And
happened to me in Grand Rapids
every single time. Then it's all awkward and it's weird, and then you're like, I don't. So. And then I was a mean drunk, and so I would, I'd be a dick. And then you realize you're looking around the room, and you're like, oh, I'm in their bar right now. I'm outnumbered by there's no backup.
Nobody here.
There's no backup coming here. And so I stopped going out with the audience. And then if people really wanted to have a drink with me, I'd say, oh, let's have a drink here at the comedy club. I wouldn't go to that second location. So the other version of that story is when I quit drinking, right? And now I'm not doing it. Now I just kind of go back to my hotel room. And the thing about quitting drinking is that it gives you so much more time back.
Right.
Now I can go back and listen to my set that I just had.
You listen to your sets that same night?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I can go and write because I'm awake, because you still have that high of having performed. When I first got single and I'm performing in Vegas, it was really difficult because it's Friday night. I have a suite at the Signature, and and there's no friends or family in, and that's when I would go out and party or go to Hakkasan or go go do my. And now I'm just sitting in a room by myself. And so what I did one night is I walked out, and they got all the casinos are connected by those bridges, and I walked out to the bridge and I looked up and I saw my name in lights, and I thought, that's why you don't drink anymore.
Right.
Because you get to see this kind of cool shit. It kind of recentered me and gave me that idea of gratitude. And so now I do work at night, or, I just fuck off and eat shit food and watch Forensic Files like most comics. But yeah, I don't
watch that.
You don't watch Forensic Files?
No, I don't like any of that stupid shit. I'm like you. I don't drink either after shows. I definitely don't go to a second location with people.
I also call other comics. That's been a big thing lately too.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Hey man, how'd your set go tonight? If as the set doesn't go the way you want it,
Yeah.
it's just like you only feel as good as your last set. We're kind of like relief pitchers, A lot of times I'll just reach out to some of my comedy friends, be like, "Hey, how'd your set go tonight? What'd you do tonight?" And
that's a good move.
That's been because I know they're night owls too.
Right.
And so there's a whole, we're a weird breed, man.
If something went wrong or I have someone there's a few comics I'll call. They always know you're not going to call someone if you have a good set. I don't think I'm not that guy unless I'm driving home. If I have to drive home, like, all right, I'm going to talk. I have 3 fucking hours to drive.
Yeah. I wanted to make this sketch where it was like a road comic his first year and it's like a big suitcase, and then like a road comic after 10 years and it's just like a duffel bag. It's like
It's so amazing.
I've got like a 5-hour rule, right? So if it's less than 5 hours home, I will drive home that night, because I don't want to sleep in some other bed, because you have to wake up the next day and drive home, and then that's your whole day that day.
And I can't wake up in the morning. Like, so what time are you typically going to bed nowadays?
I go to bed between about 1 o'clock.
Okay, that's
about
not
1
that
o'clock
late.
in the morning. Yeah.
And then what time are you waking up?
I get up around 7:30.
See, so you don't really need that much sleep.
I don't. I've always famously I need about 6 hours of sleep and a 20-minute nap. That's what I need every day.
That's good.
Yeah, and it was so funny. My wife makes fun of me because she'll see me kind of like around 5 p.m. I'm getting, my eyes are heavy. She's like, "You want to lie down?" I go, "Yeah." And so I'll just put my head down, and in exactly 20 minutes to the minute, I pop up, and she's like, "That's crazy."
I am very similar where if I have a nap in the afternoon, 20 minutes in the afternoon is like making up for an hour.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any truth to that, but
no, there is. The science behind it is almost equal to like a 4 hours
that's what I heard.
Sleep.
Yeah. I've heard different things where it's like a sleep cycle.
Yeah.
An hour is a sleep cycle of 4 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
The way I fall asleep is if I put in my set that's like over 20 minutes,
okay,
I'll fall asleep watching my own shit because
that's not good, Paul.
I know. I'm like, I know what I wanted to watch in that set. I'm like, okay, this is the moment I want to see. Is it a clip? I'm not going to fast forward to that clip because if I do, I'm not going to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's like let's say it's like a 45-minute set. I'm like, I'm going to watch the whole thing. And then sure as shit, 15 minutes in,
that's
I'm
so
out.
Funny.
It's the best way to make me sleep.
So my whole thing, it used to be Planet Earth. David Attenborough, the British dude.
Okay, yeah.
He's like, oh, and then the penguins. And I would fall asleep instantly. Now there's, dude, this is so great. There's a documentary about volcanoes that's hosted by Werner Herzog, the German guy.
I don't know who that is.
The volcano will erupt and 20 people were killed instantly.
Okay.
Immediately fall asleep, dude.
The German accent?
Yeah. Because here's what I discovered. So what they do is they play this like Russian choir music at the beginning. And I just started, and it just put me to sleep all the time. So when I went on Spotify, I typed in Russian choir music, and now I have a whole playlist.
And that puts you to sleep?
Immediately, just out.
I
It's
used to
so
fall,
great.
If I need to, do you sleep with the TV on or can you?
No.
See, I need lights on
Nope.
and TV on to
I
fall
need
asleep.
dark 14 degrees.
Really?
Yeah.
No, but I like a mask, but I need to hear TV in the background. But I'll fall asleep to TV shows that I've watched before.
Yeah,
it's like
of course.
a comfort.
Yeah.
Like like old reruns of Cheers or whatever.
Right.
That's like the best way to fall asleep.
Right. My wife always falls asleep to like horror movies.
That's insane to me.
And we had a TV in our room forever, and because she needed it every night, and somehow she got off that habit, and we finally took the TV out of the room, so she doesn't need it now.
Were you talking about horror movies tonight? One of the comedians tonight was talking about horror movies.
No.
And I was going to talk about that when we do an interview for the show, because we did a show where we interview comedians after stand up, sit down, laugh factory, no big deal. And I wanted to talk about
the biggest show in Chicago right
where
now.
I can't watch horror movies. Like I'm still to this day. I just watched Jaws for the first time.
That's a good one. My dad's the same way. So my dad was born in London in 1943, and his first memories were air raid sirens. And his mom used to make him go to the basement and check out. Go down to when he was like 5. She's like, go look for prowlers in the basement. And so my dad cannot watch any. And then this is like a generation. Exorcism came out. The movie The Exorcist came out in like 1977 or something like that. And please correct me. I know I didn't get it. But that my dad went and saw that movie. He's like, it changed. He couldn't see any more scary movies.
I can't see. I've seen I was the same way with Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
The only thing I vividly remember is when I was a kid, they showed someone being slashed and then the blood gushed out, and I was like, that's the last time I'm ever going to see it. And then people used to watch Faces of Death. Those?
Yep.
I couldn't fucking watch those. My friends love that shit.
My wife was the 2019 Vampire Queen of Chicago. And so she's like,
all in.
I call her a retired goth. Our living room is like painted black. There's still like elements of her goth life, but yeah, she was the Vampire Queen of Chicago in 2019, and so she has a very gothic background, and so it's nothing but scary movies in our house. I mean, it's just
I can't
true crime. It's all,
I can't watch it. I still to this day.
Blair Witch scared. I was 22 years old. I just moved down to Florida. Yeah. Dude, the scariest movie I've ever seen in my whole life. Just that idea of like people getting lost in a forest and can't find their way out. It was just like, oh my God.
I don't understand. Some people like that. I think you have to have trauma in your life to have it like that, because that's comfort for you. Someone explain that to me, because I'm like, no, I had a good childhood, so maybe that's why I don't I don't like to be afraid of fucking shit. Now you live in the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
Everything.
Shout out Lombard.
I grew up not too far from there.
Yeah.
I grew up, you're like a stone's throw away from Ginger Creek, my home. Suburbs are notorious for closing everything, early closing. Dude,
they're not even open. Stuff's not even open on Sundays or Mondays. Yeah. It's so weird. Yeah.
There's like the Yard House, I think, is the only place that has food late.
Right. It's weird. Yeah.
What are you doing?
So my wife is vegan. So we went from LA, like the most vegan options of all time, almost more vegan options than
normal
non-vegan options.
They give you a vegan menu and a regular menu when I was eating in
here,
LA.
it's like we got an Impossible Burger. That's it. So like it's been a huge adjustment for her. We eat Mediterranean like 3 times a week, and so it's like falafel all day. I love where I live. I love Lombard. I love the western suburbs. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, but it's so quiet and so peaceful and so safe. And so, when we left LA, one of the biggest things that happened was a unhoused person, I guess that's what they're called now, a homeless person, literally lit a fire to stay warm under where we slept. Like we got a parking structure under our apartment, and like he just literally just lit a fire, and it was raining, it was cold, and I guess in order to survive he had. But I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. Yeah, I lived in Studio City. I was paying
that's a nice area,
$1,700 a month for rent, and
I love Studio City.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I'm like, I can't do this, man. I have this joke. I go when I moved back to Chicago, land area, I couldn't fall asleep for 3 nights because there's no helicopter over. I had to put like a fake helicopter noise on, just to like be able to sleep at night.
Well, it is super quiet. Like I during COVID, I used to go drive to my parents' old neighborhood and just walk around there late at night. Yeah, because it was like I couldn't sleep.
Just look in windows and shit.
No, I mean it was just like there's nobody out.
Right.
And now, in fact, when I have shows in the suburbs, the people who bought my parents' house, they're rebuilding on it.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I was out in the suburbs, it was like 11:30 or 12. They haven't moved in yet. So I'm just walking on the premises in the backyard, taking pictures of everything. I'm like, look, Mom, I'm showing my parents the pictures. And they're like, what are you fucking doing?
Dude, you're
and
so
people are like,
creepy.
they're going to call the cops. I'm
Yeah.
like, what are they going to, my car is out front. I have a nice car. They're going to be like, oh, this guy probably lives here.
Yeah.
But
that's so funny.
I do it. And every month I'll look and see when I have a show in the suburbs, I'm going to go look at the house.
Well, we had, especially during COVID, a lot of homeless people.
Yeah.
We had, and not only were they homeless, but they were on a lot of drugs.
Sure.
And so, and the discussion that my wife and I had was that we started normalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, don't go out in the alley with the dogs. I don't. And then I'd go on the road for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, I don't want to get that phone call that my wife was attacked by some homeless person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I still love LA, but your priorities change when you get married and you have somebody to think about. Like for me, I wouldn't care. I'm just like, whatever, I'll fight a homeless person if they get attacked. But I couldn't live with myself if something happened to my wife.
But now you're like ultra safe. You're in Lombard. Don't you ever like go nuts at like 12 o'clock? You can't sleep. Everything's closed. Do you just drive? What do you do?
Well, I do podcasts at midnight.
But if you weren't doing this podcast, what were you going to do? You had a show tonight. It's a Monday.
Yeah.
You would have gotten home at like 10:30, 11, 12 maybe.
Yeah.
Or
I'm a huge gamer.
Really?
Yeah. So I used to play like 3 sports in my 20s because we got to go to the bar every night. It was just an excuse to drink. But I played volleyball, softball, and football. And then my hip I had the same thing that happened to Bo Jackson. My hip just died one day.
Yeah, same reason.
And so, But my buddies gave me this video game. I started playing games. And my brothers started playing during COVID. They started playing this one particular game. And it's given me an opportunity because my oldest brother and I are 12 and a half years apart. Oh, wow. So we're not that close. And this game has actually brought us closer. And so,
do you talk to each other while you're playing?
We're on our headsets talking. And we could care less about the game. We're just talking about different stuff. Their families, our nieces, and it's really gotten me a lot closer to these guys. So yeah, it's my life has dramatically changed. I don't think I have a more boring life. I just have a more full life now that I don't drink and party.
Well, definitely. I disagree with that.
Said the guy who's creeping his childhood home.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's fun for me. I definitely like doing that.
But I'll play video games. But I'll write. I'll edit. I'll do all the things that I do. And I like reading a lot. I read a book a month, and so it doesn't seem like a lot, but
I read 2 a month.
I get it. Yeah.
I'm a lot smarter than you.
Once you see all the many framed things that you have in your room.
Just a reminder.
Welcome to the Paul wall.
My seat's a little higher than yours too, to intimidate
It's
people.
It's nothing but dominance from Paul Farahvar.
But here, I mean, even with all those degrees, I'm still doing the same fucking thing you are.
So, do you remember why you didn't like me, though? Was it just my overall aura?
You know what's funny is I don't remember. I just remember it immediately changed when we worked together after that.
Okay.
I know we ended up doing like a Mike Yo show, and I was like, oh, he's like normal.
Yeah. It might have just been me being around my friends.
Yeah, maybe it was. I think your friends were aggressive. Maybe that's what it was.
Oh, they're very aggressive. Yeah.
And I think I had like 2 or 3 of my friends there too. But like, I went to say bye to you, I think, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm moving to." Maybe I think you were moving to LA. It was like a going away thing.
Okay.
I wish I remembered more about that first experience, but I do recall after that, you were always cool to me when I came to LA.
Yeah,
you were like helping me, introducing me to people and stuff like that. And
so I'm only a good person when I'm doing things for you.
No, well, when you go to LA, there's people that are like, oh, look me up, and they're like, douches about it. Whereas
sit on unread forever.
Yeah, I'm like, don't tell me to do it. But like, you were actually genuine, and I think before that, you and I connected somewhere too. Oh, you know what? You did my podcast a couple times. And
I did singles only.
You did it once when you were single, and then you came back for the reveal.
I brought Jen once.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, this is a podcast for singles.
No, but it was you didn't tell me, but I'm like, this is actually funny.
Yeah. It's so funny that I heard my friend Nikki, who's like my dearest friend, she's like, oh, I hated you when I first met you. Like everyone is like,
I don't remember. I really don't. I can't.
I think I just have I think I have a wall up,
Yeah.
And I think that, again, a lot of it had to do with I'm a dick when I drink. And then I'm also very standoffish when I'm sober as well. You know what I mean? So I'm just, and again, I've been kind of exploring this topic lately around male friendships in their 40s. You know what I mean? Because it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's and especially like meeting a new friend is like dating for a guy.
Yeah.
Or I'm like just staring at my phone and I'm like, I hope Rahul calls me. He was really cool. I gave him my number. It's like, how do you meet new friends in your 40s?
So weird, especially because you're so set in your ways too.
Right.
And then when you finally meet someone who's kind of like you, it's like, oh wow, you know this band, and you're like,
right.
That's all you can.
And one of the
about.
things I'm struggling with now that I'm back in the Midwest is. So my wife is 10 years younger than me, and I'm obviously embedded with her friends and their husbands and all that. And I just struggle to like have normal conversations because I don't have like the first time I met my neighbor, he's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a stand-up comic. He's like, oh, that's really cool. He's like, well, where can I see you? I'm like, oh, I work with Cirque du Soleil. He's like, who are you? Like, you know what I mean? And I just kind of forget. And then like we were going on vacation, and during COVID, my wife and I decided to do game shows during COVID. Like she won The Price is Right. I won Let's Make a Deal. Like we both. And so I'm like telling my neighbor this, and he's just like, you have the coolest life ever. Like,
so every once in a while you get reminded of that. Like I went to pick up my my niece from lacrosse practice in Florida, and she had told people I was coming, and then there was like 5 people. Like they're like, hey, she's like, hey, these guys want to meet you, and they're like, oh my God, we saw you at McCurdy's. I was like, oh yeah, thanks, man. And they're like starstruck. I'm like, I'm fucking just picking up my niece here. We're going to go get food at Fridays if you want to come. But you forget that.
But we went to my wife's friend's wedding, and she, you know how they walk around, she walks up to the table. She goes, everyone's going, how do you know Ken Garr? And I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because she's like,
there's
how do you
fun
know?
moments like that. Every once in a while we have cool things like that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is so glamorous. And then the next minute you're fucking working out at a Decatur conference.
Watching
hotel.
Forensic Files crying.
You're eating Hardee's in Decatur parking lot. They're like, they gave me curly fries. I asked for regular. But you can't go back and complain.
No, you can't.
Ken, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Sorry, I went a little too long here with you.
Oh, no, I had a great time, man.
Where can people find out more about you and your upcoming shows and stuff like that?
So all my socials, which I hate, are at Ken Garr Was Taken. I've got a 6-week residency with Cirque du Soleil beginning January 2nd. So if you're in Vegas, come check it out. It's called a show called Mad Apple. It's in the New York Hotel and Casino. I will be headlining Brad Garrett's Comedy Club in Las Vegas my birthday week, March 10th through the 16th. Otherwise, you can go to kengarr.com, and all of my show dates are listed there as well. I'd love to see you. Come say hi and tell me that you heard me on the show.
Hell yeah. And thank you so much, Ken. And thank you all for listening or watching another episode of Why Are You Awake? Go to sleep.